Yes.
Maybe I'm showing my ignorance about eating disorders, but isn't the families or the parents of kids with eating disorders, aren't they highly controlling?
You know, not always. Absolutely not. I think they get a bad rap because by the time they come in, they are controlling because they're trying to get that kid to eat, you know. Often they are super involved parents or parents that want their kid to be really happy so when the kid starts losing weight, they kind of back off, you know. And so certainly there are some that are super controlling, you know, and that's why I said that the family needs education on how to do this kind of treatment because usually they're going to try it. We've found that parents really want to do something and really want to help, so they get the information and then remember also I said that there's a high degree of heritability. So we often have a parent with an eating disorder. So if we get them into the groups where they really learn how to feed their child according to a meal plan and they buy into it, then they learn how, in these groups, they learn the family-based treatment, truly how to say, no, you have to eat that because then we'll go do this, you know, or we know you don't want to eat that right now, but remember you agreed to follow your meal plan. You know, so it's that kind of stuff instead of you're going to eat or I'm going to, you know, you're going to be grounded for a month. Because you get to that place when you're so worried about your kid.
So you don't find a high degree of rigidity in the parents? I mean, they're willing to accept and make changes in order to help their children?
And maybe those are the ones that are coming into to treatment. And the other ones possibly maybe sending their child off to inpatient facility. We really think that parents really are scared to death and with anorexics, okay? It's a difference, I'm gonna say something different with bulimia. For anorexics, the parents are scared. And so they may have behaviors that don't look very helpful and certainly aren't helpful in treatment. But we find with teaching them therapy and teaching them how to feed their kid and letting them have a support group of each other, that some of that anxiety lessens, and then they are not so controlling and rigid and, you know. Now, truly there are the outliers that are like that, absolutely, and their child is a symptom of the way the family functions. Okay, so, and if that is the case, then truly, you know, and if you know it, and if that is the case and the family is not helpful or is sabotaging, you know, we have that as well, then truly you would want to have separated treatment. You would not want to have family-based treatment for that, that teenager. That's your clinical expertise in determining that. But err on the side of thinking that the family is acting that way because they're petrified. And I'll talk about the bulimic family in just a minute. I don't believe the eating disorder world had something to do with that, but they were very thrilled when it came out because the American Dietetic Association, the dietitians that are eating disorder specialists as well as dietitians, some of them, including one here in San Antonio, are very, you know, are in both organizations and are, you know, well respected in both organizations. And that is absolutely better for someone to look at it that way, but I don't think the eating disorder world was the one that did that. They are truthfully, that is something that everybody really could stand learning. You know, if it never hurts the general population to really look at that and how we eat, because as a society, we have lost how to eat over the last 20 to 30 years. We've just lost our knowledge on that. So many myths have been floating around. So it's really great education. And the family members do take it really well when we train them how to really feed your child so that they're eating enough and then they're not overeating, because the parents are always worried about that.
So how often do you implement mindfulness?
3 days a week, 3 hours a day, and then we have an extra hour one day for individual.
This is great, and I know I've asked several people how they feel about it. Some people are just really strongly opposed to it, and I think it's a great program.
It's research-based to be very effective. So it's hard to implement. I think if you're in private practice, it's really hard to implement. So that's why I think it works really well. And I'm happy to say that's why Ed Casa started the program, because it's more effective. It really works better.
With just kids, or can you
We use adolescents too. We've gone all the way up through 17. Anybody who's living at home in high school. I do want y'all to know that where Maudsley, the FBT program was first started in the United States, was all in the north, and like in Minnesota, they work with adults with the Maudsley method. And so we had an active duty soldier that we sent to Minnesota because her parents were up there, and they did the Maudsley with her. We just had to keep it going here. The military population works with family-based treatment. Let me just say that. So when people come into San Antonio from other parts of the country, often they will come in having used the Maudsley method with their child. So it's used across the country.
Because I'm prior active duty, and when I was active duty, there was zero tolerance for eating disorders, so it was not.
Well, this is in the dependents. It's with the dependents, so it's still zero tolerance, but the dependents are often coming into San Antonio having done the Maudsley, so it's great. It's a really good one to use. It's highly effective. Now let's talk about the bulimics for a minute. Bulimic parents are often really angry. Anorexic parents are often anxious, super anxious. Bulimic parents can often be very, and I don't have that up there, but I just want y'all to know that if you get a bulimic parent in, what they're mad about is this. When someone is binging and purging and they're living at home, it's very expensive for the family. Often when money, they will binge and purge at school, which means that they can steal food. So there's usually it's a more chaotic situation. It's not as fearful because the person looks pretty, normal body weight. So the family's not so worried about them dying, even though they can really set off their electrolytes. But they're not worried about that. They're thinking, oh my gosh, we're running out of money. They're eating us out of house and home. Or they got caught, they often are stealing from HEB and they got caught, or they went shoplifting because they wanted something because we were paying for food and we ran out of money. So often, yes, you will get a bulimic's family. And that's why that last sentence is written. More research is needed for adolescents with bulimia and binge eating disorder, okay? That's why I've got this up there. The research has truly been for anorexia. They've started doing research. They say it's promising. I think it's much more difficult. We found that out as well. Often it is the family is so angry and the person, may eat during the meal, but then they'll go throw up. So there's more components that need to be addressed with the bulimic and family-based therapy. Okay, clear on that? Okay. And I wanted to really answer your question about the families. Okay. Okay, cognitive behavior therapy. Okay, I'm so happy to know that there are so many of y'all that know cognitive behavior therapy. I was trained intensively in cognitive behavior therapy back in the 80s up in Boston, where I learned eating disorders, because that's the type of treatment that we used for people with eating disorders. It works really well inpatient, okay? It also works really well in residential. Where it is difficult to do is in outpatient therapies, and I know there's not many outpatient therapists here. Okay, CBT is evidence-based. There have been a lot of studies, over 60 randomized controlled trials of CBT with bulimia, showing that it is the effective type of treatment for bulimics. Okay. It is also evidence-based and shown to be highly effective for PTSD. So if you're working with someone with trauma, really use CBT for trauma. There's great books out on that. Interpersonal therapy for bulimia takes longer, but it can be used in conjunction. And yes, I really wanted to talk about that here. When you're working with someone with bulimia, using CBT only is missing the point. And this is what therapy has really come out late over the last few years and said, and it's the next slide, so I'll wait for a minute to talk about that. Antidepressants are very effective. Okay. Do not use antidepressants as a sole treatment, because remember, you've got to change the behaviors. And usually what we find in bulimics and binge eaters is that there's a restrictive pattern of eating as well. So don't forget that they'll undereat, binge, and when they really want to be good and sustain it for a little bit, they'll say, well, I haven't purged, I haven't purged in 3 weeks. And then you have to say, and so tell me about how you've eaten for 3 weeks. And usually they have way undereaten because they're so afraid of the purge. So in order to really recover, though, they have to learn how to eat normally and tolerate it, and tolerate the uncomfortable feelings. Okay, psychoeducation, exposure, these are all the components of cognitive behavior therapy. You want to educate them on the problems of binging and purging, You want to educate them on the physical problems of that, really, is what I'm saying, okay? You want to expose them to eating things they don't feel comfortable with. It's one, like I said, it's because of the restriction. So if you're working with them, it is, and what I mean by exposure is expose them to a meal that they don't really feel comfortable eating, but that is a well-balanced meal. It'll make them highly anxious. Then you use the, for PTSD, you can use that scale of 1 to 100 of, the anxiety and the distress scale, and you can see how their anxiety will come down after, probably an hour, a little bit longer, so that they start, you expose them, and then you work on the anxiety reduction. If you don't use exposure with bulimics, you're really not doing the whole packet of CBT with them, okay? And I don't know if I would really trust them to do it at home alone. It's extremely hard to do. They can do with a loved one. They can go out, often. Okay, San Antonio, one of the things we were working with somebody the other day with was her boyfriend came in. She's a 25-year-old bulimic. She's been bulimic for 10 years. They really want to be able to go to, a Mexican food restaurant and not have her binge and purge, knowing that there's chips on the table and that it's difficult for her to eat chips and queso without overeating them and then going to the bathroom. So that is an exposure plan. So they're going to go out to eat. We've already at Ed Casa had her eat in a very contained manner, but they're now going to try to go do that and immediately come back for a therapy session so that she doesn't have a chance to decrease the anxiety or by throwing up, or avoid being anxious by undereating all day long, or avoid being over anxious by not going to the Mexican restaurant. So exposure can be done in a variety of creative ways. Okay. Cognitive restructuring, that is, as you know how to do it, you got to get at the faulty cognitions, which are usually, if I gain weight or if I eat that, I'm going to gain weight, then no one will like me, so therefore I'm going to, and then my anxiety comes up, and the minute that comes up, I am really not going to do it, I'm going to avoid. So you really have to go all the way through the behaviors, the cognitions, the affect that comes up, and the behaviors. They're all really intelligent and they love CBT. So really look at that restructuring, what they're doing with these irrational thoughts. Really, you can get them, they're great. Problem solving, usually someone who's a long-term bulimic does not problem solve. Have y'all noticed that? They're very chaotic. They can't problem solve. They're just impulsive. Okay. Even with, so what we do is we give them a lot of help problem solving. Okay, we've got to figure out how you're going to pay off your speeding ticket. So we're going to sit down with you and look at your income and how you can save money. Now, this is really skills that a family won't do sometimes because they get too upset with their young adult or even a teenager of, let's say the teenage bulimic has, also stealing behavior. You really have to work on problem solving with them on a daily basis. How can I work and go to school and not just keep myself, in a constant state of crisis? So I'm recommending that you spend some time on problem solving with them. And DBT has great problem solving handouts, and if you know DBT or want to use DBT, we can share those with you. Okay, self-monitoring of symptoms. If you can get your client with an eating disorder to trust you, which you can, they'll tell you their symptoms. So really use self-reporting of symptoms because it's been researched that it decreases the behavior. Certainly for bulimics, remember they don't like this behavior. Anorexics really, their behavior works for them. Well, bulimics, their behavior works for them as well, but they don't like it. So you can use that monitoring to actually decrease the symptoms. Doesn't take them completely away, but it does make them, research shows that it lessens them. Okay, you want to reduce dieting behaviors. Every person with binge eating disorder that we have worked with wants to diet, sneaks diet. Okay, I just went to Weight Watchers. I really don't want to eat what y'all are telling me to eat. I really want to diet. I want to lose my weight fast. Okay, dieting behavior, you've really got to watch when you're working with bulimics and with binge eaters. You've really got to watch that because it'll lead to that deprivation eating and then the binging. It leads to that whole binge purge cycle. Okay, that if you don't know it, binge purge cycle always has dieting behavior in it. Okay. Education on medical complications, adverse effects of dieting. Okay, you want to give all education. That's part of CBT. CBT is more effective than supportive counseling with PTSD and with the eating disorders, bulimia and binge eating disorder. Okay, I think we all know that, but we just really want people to know that yes, we love our clients, we want to be supportive, but we really have to monitor their behaviors in order to reduce the symptoms. You've got to have that component. Otherwise, it's just not as effective, and the person will become what we call the functional bulimic. Okay, there's two new types of CBT that have been developed over the last 5 to 6 years. Enhanced CBT is a manual for the treatment of bulimia. It focuses on some emotions, not just behaviors. So it really goes after the emotions of depression, goes after self-esteem and perfectionism. So it's great. If you don't have it, I want to recommend that. It is by Wunderlich. No, Wunderlich is the integrative CBT. That's Stephen Wunderlich. The enhanced CBT is, I think, Fairburn. Okay, those are excellent manuals.